Happy Tuesday, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this 15th episode of the Southern Conservative Podcast. My name is Ty. A quick reminder, there will only be one more podcast this week, and that will be tomorrow. There will not be a podcast on Thursday, February 8th. Now, I want to quickly recap for you the memo that the President declassified on Friday. This was the memo written by Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy of the House Intelligence Committee. It's important to go over this again in light of the Democratic memo that is expected to be released, as well as a redacted memo already released by the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. I'm just going to hit the highlights of Friday's memo, and you can follow along with the bullet points that you'll see on the screen. A FISA warrant was first obtained on October 21, 2016, to spy on Carter Page, who was a volunteer in Trump's campaign. When all the evidence in the memo was put together, you'll see how going after Carter Page was just a way to get deeper inside Trump's inner circle. Each FISA warrant is only good for 90 days, and it has to be reauthorized in order for surveillance to continue. The warrant was reauthorized 3 times, making a total of 4 authorizations to conduct surveillance. FISA warrant applications require authorization from the FBI and the DOJ. The only people from the FBI who can sign off on a warrant is the director and the deputy director. The memo states Director James Comey signed off on 3 applications, and Deputy Director Andrew McCabe signed off on 1. The applications also need approval from either the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, or the Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division. The memo states Sally Yates, Dana Bente, and the current Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, signed off on the applications. They all didn't sign off on all 4 applications, but they each signed off on at least 1. The dossier played an essential role in obtaining a FISA warrant, and senior officials within the FBI and the DOJ were aware of the political origins of the dossier. Deputy Attorney General Andrew McCabe testified on October 17th that a warrant would not have been sought had it not been for the dossier. Key information was not made known to the FISA court about the dossier when the FBI was trying to obtain their warrants. Christopher Steele created the dossier on behalf of the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. In fact, Steele was paid $160,000 by the DNC and the Hillary campaign, who funneled the money through the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who in turn hired Christopher Steele, a former British MI6 spy. Steele was also an informant to the FBI, and the FBI authorized payment to Steele for information he wrote in the dossier. None of this was revealed to the FISA court. The FBI claimed to corroborate the information in the dossier by citing an article published by Yahoo News on September 23, 2016. The article was about a trip Carter Page had made to Moscow. Well, the man who wrote the story, Michael Isikoff, was given information by Christopher Steele, the man who wrote the dossier. In other words, the FBI did not corroborate the dossier with the Yahoo News story because they both rely on the same source. This was left out of the FISA application. Steele was terminated by the FBI after he revealed his relationship to the FBI in an article published by Mother Jones. For failing to maintain confidentiality, Steele loses his credibility as a reliable source. Prior to Steele being fired by the FBI, he had a relationship with a man in the Department of Justice by the name of Bruce Orr, who at the time was the Associate Deputy Attorney General. Christopher Steele told Bruce Orr that he was desperate that Trump not be elected and was passionate about Trump not being president. This was never revealed to the FISA court. Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie Orr, worked for Fusion GPS and was helping to conduct opposition research on Donald Trump. That information was given to her husband, who then turned it over to the FBI. So you see, a workaround was done to funnel salacious information on Trump to the FBI after Steele was let go as an FBI informant. The relationship Bruce Orr had with Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele was not made known to the FISA court. The head of the counterintelligence division at the FBI noted the verification of the dossier was in its infancy, and the FBI later assessed the dossier as being only minimally verified. Prior to Trump's inauguration, FBI Director James Comey briefed President-elect Trump on the dossier, saying it was unverified. In June 2017, Comey said the dossier was, quote, salacious and unverified. Yet in October of 2016, Comey went before a FISA court trying to obtain a warrant using the dossier. Do you think the court would have granted one had the court known the dossier was salacious and unverified? It sounds like Comey not only withheld exculpatory information, but he flat out lied to the court about the dossier. The FISA application used in an attempt to obtain a warrant to spy on Carter Page referenced George Papadopoulos, even though there is no evidence of collusion between Page and Papadopoulos. It was the revelation that Papadopoulos told an Australian ambassador that Russia had gotten Clinton's emails that launched the FBI investigation into Trump-Russia collusion. The information from Papadopoulos is actually fourth-hand hearsay, as I've mentioned before. That investigation was started by Peter Strzok. It's been revealed there are over 50,000 text messages sent and received between Peter Strzok and his mistress, Lisa Page. One of those text messages references an insurance policy with Andrew McCabe to prevent Trump from getting elected and then to take down his presidency. It's believed the insurance policy involves the dossier to get a warrant to go after Trump and his associates. So you can clearly see the political underpinnings of the FISA warrants and the dossier. This was a well-coordinated effort on the part of Hillary Clinton and her campaign, the DNC, Perkins Coie, Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, and top officials at the FBI and DOJ to take down Donald Trump. And the investigation started by Strzok eventually led to the creation of the special counsel investigation. In other words, had exculpatory information not been withheld from the court, a warrant would never have been issued due to the presentation of salacious dossier that was filled with lies and Russia propaganda that was fed to Christopher Steele by the Russians. Between the spying and the leaks from top officials in the FBI and the DOJ, including Comey leaking a memo to a Columbia Law School professor who in turn leaked the memo to the New York Times, the special counsel investigation would never have gotten off the ground. According to Devin Nunes, the House Intelligence Committee is conducting a very broad investigation into surveillance abuses, and there is currently an active investigation looking at the State Department, which Nunes says is near its conclusion. Previous media reports have been published citing ties between Christopher Steele and the State Department, and that Sidney Blumenthal was briefed on the dossier. You'll remember that Blumenthal was being paid by Hillary Clinton in exchange for foreign policy advice while she was Secretary of State. Now, yesterday, the House Intelligence Committee voted unanimously to declassify the Democratic version of the memo released Friday. It is now up to Trump to decide whether to release the memo. It has been reported that nothing in the Democratic memo refutes the findings laid out in the Nunes memo. Apparently, the only difference is a footnote indicating the court was aware of the political underpinnings of the dossier. But that still doesn't excuse the FBI from trying to obtain a warrant using a dossier that was absolutely unverified and filled with Russian lies. Now, if it's true that the Democratic memo does not refute the findings of the Nunes memo, it would line up with statements made by members of the FBI who read the Nunes memo, saying there are, quote, no factual inaccuracies in the Nunes memo. And of course, we know that FBI Director Christopher Wray read the memo a little over a week ago and promptly let go of the Deputy Director Andrew McCabe the very next morning. Wray must have felt that what he read was accurate and was damning enough on the part of McCabe to have him removed from the FBI. Now, before we get to the Senate memo, I want to mention one thing about Carter Page. The FBI tried to obtain warrants to spy on Page. Now, let's assume for a minute the FBI was completely open and honest with the FISA court about Carter Page. If they felt they had enough evidence to pin down Carter Page with collusion with the Russians, and had enough evidence to bring a petition to the FISA court to get a warrant to spy on Carter Page, and then reauthorize that warrant 3 additional times, why hasn't Carter Page been charged with collusion? For that matter, Mueller's team has not charged Carter Page with anything. Folks, that should be enough to tell you. The focus was never on Carter Page. It was about getting inside Trump's inner circle of associates, to leak information to the left-wing media, to unmask names of people that may have been talking to Russian officials. There are a lot of people right now, folks, who are in legal jeopardy. And what did President Obama know about the domestic spying and the warrants? In fact, the initial warrant was obtained in October 2016, and the first reauthorization was obtained the day before Trump was sworn in as president. I can't imagine the president not being briefed on this, since it would have been a matter of national security involving the intelligence community. It will be very interesting to see exactly how far up the chain all of this goes, folks. Just something to think about. Okay, so I read to you yesterday an article from Byron York highlighting a memo released by Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham, 2 members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. The memo is actually a heavily redacted version of a criminal referral made against Christopher Steele. Even though the memo is highly redacted, there is some key information from this referral that I want to highlight. The referral mentions that much of the information gathered in the Steele dossier was from Russian government sources inside Russia. The funding of the dossier came from Fusion GPS by the law firm Perkins Coie on behalf of the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. In testimony given before the Senate Intelligence Committee in June 2017, James Comey described the dossier as salacious and unverified. Christopher Steele testified in a court in London that he had given briefings about the dossier to a small number of journalists in the summer and fall of 2016, which would have been prior to the time the FBI obtained its first FISA warrant. Under instruction from Fusion GPS, the outfit that hired Christopher Steele, Steele mentioned he briefed journalists from the New York Times, the Washington Post, Yahoo News, the New Yorker, and CNN at the end of September 2016. He later met with the New York Times, Washington Post, and Yahoo News in mid-October 2016. Of course, the story published by Yahoo News was used by the FBI as corroboration of the dossier, when in fact, the source for the Yahoo News story was Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier. The criminal referral states that the more people Steele told about the dossier, the more the dossier was subject to manipulation. According to the referral, there was a pre-election dossier and a post-election memo. The pre-election dossier is the one some in the media have been talking about now for months. It's the dossier that was used to obtain the FISA warrants. The post-election memo, you could call it a second dossier, is new information we are learning about and is really the big headline of this criminal referral. In a British court, Steele said he received unsolicited and unverified information and included that information in the second dossier. And the referral seems to imply that unsolicited and unverified information was also included in the original dossier that was brought before the FISA court. The referral mentions that a memo dated October 19, 2016, includes a report from the U.S. State Department on information provided by a foreign subsource who, through a series of contacts, can be traced back to Hillary and Bill Clinton. Here is verbatim from the referral, quote, "It is troubling enough that the Clinton campaign funded Mr. Steele's work, but that these Clinton associates were contemporaneously feeding Mr. Steele allegations raises additional concerns about his credibility." Of course, this is important because the credibility of the dossier is reflected on the credibility of Christopher Steele. If Steele was fired by the FBI for telling Mother Jones that he was an FBI source, and he was talking to a whole host of journalists who began leaking information about the dossier, and he received allegations from associates of Clinton In addition to the fact that Clinton funded the original dossier, his credibility is absolutely shot all to hell. There is no way the dossier could have been legitimate, and in fact the dossier has been found to be full of lies and Russian propaganda. The referral also confirms the information in the Nunes memo surrounding the Yahoo News story, in which information in the dossier concerning Carter Page was given to reporter Michael Isikoff. In fact, many other findings in the Nunes memo have been confirmed by this Senate criminal referral. The question now is what Clinton associates were providing unverified allegations to Christopher Steele. Was Hillary Clinton aware of it? What members of the Obama State Department provided information to Steele? And was Barack Obama aware of it? I'm sure we're going to get answers to some of these questions sometime in the very near future. I want to quickly remind everyone to please check out the Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/Southern Conservative. That's facebook.com/Southern Conservative. Be sure to like the page and follow the newsfeed. You will find links to articles from conservative outlets on stories you might not hear about in the mainstream media. Plus, the newsfeed contains links to the daily podcasts. Be sure to also subscribe to this channel. You will be notified each time I upload a podcast. A new podcast is posted daily, Monday through Thursday. And a reminder, there will not be a podcast this Thursday, February 8th. I want to end with this story out of Indianapolis. Linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts, Edwin Jackson, was killed by a drunk driver early Sunday morning. Here's the story from Indy 4 News. I have this story already posted to the Facebook page. Headline: Man accused of drunk driving, killing 2 men, including Colts player Edwin Jackson, was undocumented. Now let's stop here, folks. Undocumented. I love this politically correct language from the left. We have undocumented and documented immigrants. Folks, do you realize that the majority of immigrants who are in this country illegally are people who have overstayed visas? They have documentation, it's just that their documentation is expired. Hence, they are in the country illegally. Folks, there are illegal immigrants, those who don't give a rip about the law and just show up in the United States, and there are those who are legal immigrants, those who have followed the legal procedures to come to America. The guy who killed these 2 people is an illegal immigrant because he is in the country illegally. Anyway, here's the article. The suspected drunk driver accused of killing 2 people, including Colts player Edwin Jackson, is an undocumented immigrant who has previously been deported 2 times, once in 2007 and again in 2009, according to Indiana State Police. Detectives have determined the driver of the Ford F-150 was using the alias Alex Cabrera Gonzalez. They say his given name is Manuel Orrego Zavala, 37 years old, and he is a citizen of Guatemala by birth. The 2 victims killed were identified as Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson, 26, of Atlanta, and Jeffrey Monroe, 54. So this guy from Guatemala had been deported twice and yet still wound up in the United States, still wound up in Indiana. Folks, he's a long way from the southern border. Heck, he's closer to Canada than he is Mexico. Anyway, this is the whole point of Cates Law, to stiffen the penalties for those who re-enter the United States after having been deported. Sadly, Cates Law is not law today because it cannot make its way through the United States Senate. Police believe Monroe was working as an Uber driver and Jackson was his passenger. At some point, Jackson became sick, so Monroe pulled over on the side of I-70 just west of Holt Road shortly before 4 a.m. They were standing outside of the car when Orrego Zavala drove his black Ford F-150 onto the emergency shoulder and struck the rear of the car as well as the victims. A state trooper discovered the wreckage, and as he slowed to stop for the crash, police say he struck one of the bodies of the victims in the center lane. According to police, Orrego Zavala fled the scene on foot, but the trooper who discovered the crash apprehended him shortly after on the ramp to Holt Road. Police believe Orrego Zavala was intoxicated and was driving without a license. He was transported to the Marion County Jail. Court documents show a breath test was administered at the scene, and he tested at 0.239% blood alcohol content. This is about 3 times the legal limit of 0.08%. State police investigators are working with U.S. federal immigration officials, and they have placed a hold on Orrego Zavala. Republican Congressman Rokita, and I might be mispronouncing his last name, issued this statement. The loss of life at the hands of illegal immigrant criminals should make all Hoosiers sad and ultimately angry. We must do more to get these dangerous illegal immigrant criminals off of our streets and guarantee this never happens again by building a wall, ending sanctuary cities, and stopping illegal immigration once and for all. Amen to that, brother. Faith in Indiana issued this statement. We are sending our heartfelt condolences to the family of Edwin Jackson. While his death is tragic and certainly untimely, our focus must be on ending drunk driving, not making this a political issue. The tragedy here is that this young man lost his life due to the negligence of someone who decided to drive under the influence. Well, folks, it was also due to someone's negligence in abiding American immigration law. It was a horrible decision, and this decision could have been made by anyone, regardless of legal status. What we should not do is minimize the loss of life by politicizing the driver's immigration status. Are you kidding me, folks? Minimize the loss of life by politicizing the driver's immigration status. Folks, I don't know about you, but I want to minimize the loss of life by making sure illegal immigrants with criminal histories and those who have been deported never step foot inside the United States again. Legal status is not the culprit here, drunk driving is, according to Faith in Indiana. Yes, drunk driving is what killed these 2 individuals, but had this man not been in the United States, and he has no right to be in the United States without going through proper legal channels, these 2 individuals would not have been hit by this illegal immigrant. Had we had a secure southern border, he would not have been on the interstate in Indianapolis Sunday morning. I mean, if you want to get to the root of the problem, that's the root of the problem. Sure, we have drunk drivers in this country, but we can minimize the number of drunk drivers by minimizing the number of illegal immigrants who turn into drunk drivers. We already have enough drunk drivers with those who are already American citizens. At this time, the only thing we should be focusing on is supporting and loving Mr. Jackson's family and all families impacted by such a tragic loss of life. Well, there are many, many families, folks, who have been adversely affected because of illegal immigrants, whether it's death by drunk driving, other forms of murder, rape, and so on. What are the angel moms and dads to think of Faith in Indiana's statement? The fact of the matter is, folks, we have illegal immigrants in this country, people who do not have the right to be here, who are a threat and a danger to the livelihood of American citizens, those who do have the right to be here. Now, I'm not talking about all illegal immigrants, but certainly there are a number of them who have committed heinous crimes in this country. There's going to be an immigration fight in the Congress very soon, and hopefully we'll start to get tough on illegal immigration in this country and find a way to put an end to it. And our thoughts and prayers certainly go out to the families of these 2 victims. Well, folks, that's it for today. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another podcast. Have a great day, everybody.